Why does northern Vietnam feel so different from southern Vietnam? If you've traveled through Vietnam from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City, you've probably experienced something that almost every foreigner notices but is afraid to say out loud. The country changes, not just the weather, not just the food, not just the accent. The people feel different. You arrive in Hanoi, and the city immediately gives you a certain feeling. People move with purpose. Conversations are shorter. Strangers don't always smile at you. Cashiers finish the transaction without much small talk. The streets are loud, but the people seem reserved. Then you fly south. Ho Chi Minh City. Within hours, someone is asking where you're from. The cafe owner remembers your order. A Grab driver starts telling you about his cousin in Australia. Someone laughs with you before you've even introduced yourself. And you start thinking, wait, is this the same country? That's when people make the mistake. They assume they're witnessing two different kinds of people. They're not. They're witnessing two different cultures that grew under two very different historical conditions. And history leaves fingerprints on people long after the history books close. One of the biggest misconceptions foreigners have is that modern countries automatically have uniform cultures. They don't. Political borders are young. Culture is old, sometimes much older. Vietnam has been politically unified for decades, but regional identities were already centuries old before modern Vietnam even existed. You don't erase hundreds of years of cultural evolution simply because a line on a map changed. Look around the world. Northern Italians don't behave exactly like Sicilians. Texans don't act like New Yorkers. Bavarians don't act like Berliners. Scots don't act like Londoners. People living under one flag can still have remarkably different ways of seeing the world. Vietnam is no exception. To understand today's Vietnam, you have to understand where Vietnam began. Vietnamese civilization didn't begin in Saigon. It began in the north. The Red River Delta wasn't just another fertile plain. It was the birthplace of the Vietnamese state. For over 1,000 years, that region carried the weight of invasions, dynasties, imperial courts, Confucian scholarship, bureaucracies, taxation systems, military campaigns, and political struggles. Generation after generation grew up in a society where stability wasn't guaranteed. Foreign powers came, foreign powers left, dynasties rose, dynasties collapsed, borders shifted. The people who survived weren't necessarily the happiest. They were the most disciplined, the most organized, the most cautious. Culture remembers survival long after people forget why they behave the way they do. Then there's geography. People love pretending geography doesn't matter. History disagrees. The Red River Delta is productive, but historically it demanded careful irrigation, flood management, cooperation, and planning. Life wasn't impossible. It just wasn't effortless. Every harvest mattered. Every season mattered. When mistakes threaten survival, societies naturally become more organized, more cautious, more hierarchical, more serious. Not because anyone writes a rule book saying from now on smile less, because survival rewards certain behaviors. After enough generations, those behaviors become normal. Nobody questions them anymore. Now travel south. Everything changes. The Mekong Delta is one of the richest agricultural regions in the world. Water everywhere, rice everywhere, fish everywhere, fruit everywhere. The land itself is generous. That doesn't mean life was easy. It means the environment rewarded different behaviors. Trade flourished, markets expanded, boats connected villages, commerce became everyday life, merchants appeared, migrants arrived, opportunity attracted outsiders. When strangers constantly become customers, business partners, neighbors, or future friends, openness becomes valuable. Again, not because people consciously choose it, because cultures slowly adapt to whatever helps them succeed. Then comes migration. This is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Southern Vietnam wasn't always Vietnamese. Over centuries, Vietnamese settlers gradually expanded southward through a long historical process, settling lands that had previously been under other kingdoms and integrating them into the Vietnamese state. Think about the type of person willing to leave everything behind: their home, their relatives, their village, their ancestors, to move hundreds of kilometers into unfamiliar territory. They're usually not the most cautious people. They're risk takers, explorers, merchants, farmers chasing opportunity, families willing to gamble on a better future. Migration doesn't just move people, It filters personalities. The people willing to move are often different from the people who stay. Repeat that process for centuries. Eventually, entire regions develop different social norms. This phenomenon exists everywhere. Australia developed differently from Britain. The American West developed differently from New England. Argentina differs from Spain. Brazil differs from Portugal. Frontier societies usually become less formal. Older administrative centers usually remain more traditional. Vietnam follows the same historical pattern. Now let's address the elephant in the room: friendliness. Ask 10 tourists. 9 will probably tell you the South felt friendlier. Does that mean Southerners are better people? No. It means they express friendliness differently. That's a huge distinction. Western cultures often define friendliness as immediate warmth, smiling, greeting strangers, making jokes, casual conversation, helping before being asked. These behaviors make visitors feel comfortable. Naturally, tourists interpret them positively. First impressions matter. Northern Vietnam often operates under a different social script. Trust comes first. Warmth comes later. You aren't automatically treated like an old friend simply because you walked into a coffee shop. Relationships develop gradually. People observe you, learn about you, figure out whether you're genuine. Once you cross that invisible line, everything changes. People become astonishingly generous. Not performatively, practically. Need someone to pick you up at the airport? Done. Need help negotiating with a landlord? Done. Need someone to spend an entire Saturday helping you move apartments? Done. Need someone to accompany you to a government office? Done. No Instagram story, no public display, no expectation of repayment, just loyalty. That's a different definition of kindness. This is why so many long-term expats end up saying something unexpected. I like Saigon immediately, but Hanoi grew on me. That's an interesting sentence, because it reveals two different timelines. One city wins first impressions, the other often wins long-term relationships. Neither outcome is guaranteed, but the pattern appears often enough that many people notice it. Then there's communication. People underestimate how much language shapes perception. Northern Vietnamese speech is generally more clipped and direct. Southern Vietnamese speech often sounds softer and more relaxed to many listeners. Even Vietnamese themselves joke about this. Now imagine you're a tourist who doesn't understand Vietnamese. You're judging purely by tone. One accent naturally sounds harsher. Another naturally sounds gentler. Without understanding a single word, you've already assigned personalities to complete strangers. Humans do this constantly. We mistake communication style for character. The economy reinforces everything. Hanoi is the political capital. Government ministries, universities, administrative institutions, diplomatic missions, state-owned enterprises. The city attracts people pursuing careers that reward structure, discipline, and professionalism. Ho Chi Minh City is different. Finance, trade, technology, startups, international corporations, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, private business. Different industries reward different personalities, spend enough decades attracting different kinds of workers, and city cultures begin diverging. Again, not because anyone planned it, because incentives quietly shape society. Climate adds another layer. Northern Vietnam experiences 4 seasons: cold winters, gray skies, humidity. Southern Vietnam stays tropical almost year-round. People joke that warmer weather creates warmer personalities. Reality is more complicated. But climate absolutely influences daily routines, clothing, architecture, agriculture, working hours, festivals, even mood. Nobody escapes geography. Politics complicates everything further. Modern Vietnam carries memories from the 20th century that are still present in family histories. Some families experience war differently. Some experience reunification differently. Some migrated, some stayed, some prospered, some struggled. Most people don't discuss these things with strangers. But historical memory doesn't disappear simply because people stop talking about it. It quietly shapes attitudes for generations. One thing foreigners consistently misunderstand is Vietnamese bluntness, especially in the North. Someone may tell you directly that you've gained weight, that your haircut looks strange, that your Vietnamese pronunciation is terrible. Many Westerners interpret this as rudeness. Often it isn't intended that way at all. In many contexts, directness signals honesty rather than hostility. Likewise, Southern indirectness can confuse people accustomed to straightforward communication. Someone smiles, agrees, nods politely, then never follows through. Were they lying? Maybe. Or maybe they were avoiding embarrassing you with an outright refusal. Different cultures solve social problems differently. Neither system is universally superior. Both have strengths. Both create misunderstandings. Another fascinating difference lies in social circles. Many Northerners place tremendous importance on long-established relationships, family, school friends, childhood neighbors, trusted colleagues. Their circles can appear smaller, but often much deeper. Southerners, especially in large urban areas like Ho Chi Minh City, may build networks more quickly. Business contacts, professional acquaintances, new friendships, community groups. Migration encourages flexibility. Old administrative centers encourage continuity. Both approaches make sense within their historical contexts. Perhaps the biggest mistake anyone can make is reducing 40 or 50 million people into one sentence. Northerners are cold. Southerners are fake. Neither survives contact with reality. Vietnam is full of warm Northerners, reserved Southerners, generous people, selfish people, quiet people, loud people, traditional people, progressive people. Every stereotype begins as an observation. It becomes dangerous when people forget it's only describing probabilities, not individuals. So why do so many travelers notice the same pattern? Because patterns often contain a grain of truth. The South frequently feels more immediately welcoming. The North frequently feels more reserved at first. Those impressions are real. But first impressions are exactly that. First impressions. Character takes much longer to measure. A smile lasts 2 seconds. Trust takes years. Hospitality can be instant. Loyalty has to be earned. Vietnam simply expresses those virtues in different proportions depending on where you are. The South often invites you to the table before asking who you are. The North often asks who you are before inviting you to the table. By the end of the meal, both may treat you like family. They just start the conversation from different places. And that's probably the most important thing outsiders miss. The debate was never really about who is friendlier. It was always about how friendship is expressed.